next up, we have a panel discussion on enabling an agile workforce with AI-powered learning. For this discussion, I'd like to invite Nishchay Suri, President Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa Edcast, Amit Das, CHRO Bennett Coleman and Company, and to moderate this conversation, we have Nick Short, Chief Global Development Officer, SHRM. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. And hello and good afternoon. I know it's been a very action-packed 2 days with SHRM India Talent 21 with a lot of fascinating topics about talent, the role of people, the role of technology. And we're here to talk about, as we've advertised, the role of AI-powered learning. But as we think about everything that we've heard, and I've been thinking about this, I've been wondering whether AI-powered learning, AI-powered talent development is too narrow a topic. It's almost like saying, here is a hammer, and use this hammer to do everything that you need and that you want to do. And maybe we should be taking this a little bit more broadly. Amit, as we have discussed in our initial session, you had a much broader take on not just artificial intelligence, but all technologies and how all technologies can be used in the development of an agile workforce. So maybe you can start us off by commenting on that.
Sure. And sorry for just joining a bit late because I was struggling with the technology, which invariably happens when such things, and especially when you are having a session on technology and learning. So good afternoon, all of you. Thanks, Nick. Hi, Nishchay. Look forward to a good, interesting discussion. Yeah, so I think in today's knowledge-driven network organization, we find that the digital disruptions, it has transformed the way we do business today, where technology has always been leveraged as a kind of a force multiplier. And it's basically, we are leveraging technology to scale up human intelligence, at the same time, the productivity that we expect from our employees. Now, the technology can, all of us know that it can either automate our current ways of doing things, or it can transform the way we do things. But incidentally, we find that most of the times we have chosen to do the former, where actually we are supposed to do the latter. We must use technology to transform our current ways of doing things than rather trying to just automate our current ways of doing things. So we need to push up the digital savviness in the organization so that we can embrace the right technology to scale up our cognitive intelligence, at the same time, to, as I said, drive employee productivity, and at the same time, give an experiential journey to our employees across our employee lifecycle touchpoints. Now, technology is today enabling access and also personalizing the learning that we are going through, which has inclusive learning solutions driven by the mobile data penetration that we have in a country like India, which has, we have done a remarkable journey in the last maybe a decade or so. So this is revolutionizing the entire learning ecosystem. The new age AI and machine learning driven learning platforms, they're igniting the passion to learn and also building an intense learning appetite amongst professionals. So when it comes to talent development, we find that the millennial workforce, they are more vocal about their expectations and continuously seek learning opportunities to enhance their employability. And so that's all the more reason organizations must quickly respond to such individualized learning demands of this new age workforce and approach it through a confluence of individualized education, entertainment, and enlightenment at the same time. So hyper-personalization and customized learning curriculums, it can cater to the employee's unique needs, their preferences, which can also be aligned to the individual's career aspirations. And this is where we need to embrace the digital platforms and a broader technology, more than only AI and machine learning that we're talking about, through delivering meaningful content in a manner that is entertaining, engaging, and contextual. Say, for example, the digital application-based learning solutions supported by the interactive technologies such as artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality, the bots, they're significantly transforming the ways employees learn today. The human intuition that we have been using in the past, it's being now replaced by the algorithms and the big data to power those insights. The technology of cognition, for example, it can power the bots to have humanized conversations and supply learners with relevant content to enhance their learning journey. the machine learning technology, it can observe learner behaviors and also offer a much more sharper learning solution specific to that individual employee's need. Today, the AI, the AR, the augmented reality, and the virtual realities, it's offering complex and live simulations, which is enabling real-time skill building for our employees. And now we find that the Indian economy is adopting digital at a breakneck pace, causing a series of disruptions in all directions. The disruptive digital ecosystem, it will transit many manual tasks to cost-efficient machines and algorithms. So this would pose enhanced challenges for people who aren't comfortable or are not capable of learning these new things. For example, in the industry that I am, the digitalization of the media industry has been driven primarily by the demand for instant access to customized content anytime, anywhere. The newsroom analytics, the live streaming of digital content and social analytics, these are game changers, which is redefining the digital-led innovation roadmap for the media industry. The millennials, they're highly excited to be part of the digital transformation journey. And that's providing endless opportunities. And media organizations like us, we need to leverage this appetite for embracing this new age technology and drive a seamless transition. So I think we must choose the right intuitive technology for high adoption, identify our internal evangelists for accelerated buying of this new technology, help employees understand what is in it for them, customize the training modules, highlight some quick wins, and also reward the desired behavior for adopting the right people technology.
You make some very interesting points, Amit, about the complexity of the environment and the wealth of tools that are available to us. I think even about your comments regarding bots, you set up bots, but you want to have relevant conversations was your term. However, if we just say, if I just say, I want to use bots, put bots out there, throw bots out there, I can have bots having incredibly dumb conversations with people, which is not what we want. Now, Nishai, in Edcast, you use a variety of AI tools to empower learning. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about some of the tools that you use and how you make these choices that Amit highlighted to make sure that you are picking the right tools for the right application.
Thanks, Nick. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining in. Let me start by saying, well, Edcast is a world leader in the area of utilizing AI to power the journey of learners, to help bridge the skill gap, to ensure that you create a culture of collaborative innovation to drive productivity in the workforce. And there are many use cases. So the business benefits clearly shine and have the attention of Fortune 500 companies, G2000 companies, governments, associations, academia. The burning platform, Nick, I think is an important one to address. Number one, 2/3 of the world workforce is disengaged today. We just saw in the previous session that a number of talent leaders and learning leaders recognize that providing advancement opportunities, investing in training and development is the need of the hour, right? Bridging the skill gap. There is huge disruption that is occurring across industries within businesses that has obviously highlighted and identified new skills that need to be embraced, and very quickly, might I add, very quickly. Clearly, agility is important. Now, the question is, what makes us human is our intelligence. And AI is nothing but an extension of that quality. So the more intelligence we infuse within the organization, and whether that's human-machine collaboration or AI on its own, whether it's augmented intelligence, autonomous intelligence, assisted intelligence, or simply automation, clearly the principles that we need to deploy are we learning more? Is there a mechanism of self-correction? Is there reasoning that is built in as far as use of AI is concerned? Now, what does Edcast do with its clients around the world? Number one, we believe that you need to create smarter content, which is contextualized. How can you power your content in a way that you can aggregate it, you can contextualize it, utilize the open source content that is available? How do we do that? We obviously crawl the web and look for content that is relevant. You filter out the noise, you create a network of subject matter experts that are contributing to this. You infuse that content into the skill taxonomy, and then you distribute it very quickly within the organization based on the proficiency of the learner, the appetite of the learner to learn, what he wants to learn, interests, so on and so forth. But ultimately, it's the quality of the content that creates the relevance to begin with. And we mustn't forget that. The aspect of application only comes when you establish relevance. And application is suited to the learner's needs and requirements. So quickly, personalization is drawing a lot more attention today from the learning community. And clearly, it's not an easy ask, right? It's easier said than done when you talk about personalization to learning preferences, to the time of the day that you want to learn, in the mode that you want to learn in, on the device that you want to learn, so on and so forth. But personalization, understanding the learner gaps, knowing what a learner knows, doesn't know, helping bridge that gap very quickly, and then providing an opportunity of application. What are the other very important benefits? Analytics. So clearly, the use of analytics, and that's assisted intelligence. What can you learn about the learner in terms of choices, in terms of content preferences, and how can you therefore equip the learning environment and the learning ecosystem with more content that is relevant? It's clearly a game where you are being forced to select optimized content, retire old content, get rid of the scrap content, surface content that is discoverable and of utility. So discovery is about then again using the power of AI about content characteristics and tagging. Can you power the efficiency levels that exist in finding the right content just in time, just for me, and just enough? Those are the three key magical words finally that boil down in an environment. So it's about smart analytics. It is about smart content. It is equally about personalization. It is about, for example, automation. I will not discount the utility of at least the processes that are engineered and fit for purpose. Can they be automated to drive efficiency within the organization? So there lies the opportunity in my mind.
Those three magic words that you use actually define relevance in a context that Amit mentioned. And without the analytics, without the data, you can't do the personalization. I mean, you have to rely on the data, the availability of data. Now, the proliferation of data is one of the key trends that we see in our workplace overall. Are there other key trends that you see driving this? And Nishai, let's start with you, and then Amit, move over to you in terms of the key trends that you see, both for individuals and organizational learning.
So at Edcast, we've been carrying out some pioneering research in the field of learning and development for the last 2 years now. We've covered roughly 250 odd organizations. This is, let me talk to you about specifically the India insights. While this is a global study, I'll try and focus more on the India insights and findings. Number one, so on an app, if you just look at learning health as a concept, and I just want to introduce that, that's really the proficiencies that exist within an organization to fulfill the business need and the employee needs. And corporate India is pretty much operating at 2/3 of its potential. So on a score of 100, we kind of land at 66, 67, really showing that there's a lot more we can do in terms of fulfilling the requirements of the learners and fulfilling business needs. What are the important trends in relationship to the subject that we are discussing? Learning in the flow of work. Let me begin with that, because I believe that that is a utility that has been made possible thanks to the advancement in technology. Let me break that down for you. So as an example, if you're big users of WebEx, can you embed learning in that system of productivity? Can you ensure that the WebEx space and platform is the space where content can also be discovered, shared with teams that are participating on a project, or between a manager and an employee, or within a cohort that is a special interest group? Can you help prepare using this technology? The API economy has made this all possible. Can you help prepare people before a meeting? Can you help? What do you do during the meeting? Can you provide insights? And can you actually help with the follow through of a meeting once it occurs? Given that we all live in the world of meetings, I'm taking that as an example. But that is a very important trend that we see learning in the flow of work as
let me pause you there, Nishai, because it's an important point. I mean, you're talking about now the intersection of learning and workflow and work process. Learning is embedded, and learning that's not just the domain of the individual, but the domain of the enterprise, the organization. And Amit, when we met previously, you had some interesting comments about the distinction and the relationship between individual and organizational learning that I would hope that you would share with us now.
Yeah. See, this unpredictable business ecosystem, I think that needs to be managed by constantly being agile and constantly reinventing and transforming our current ways of doing things, as I mentioned earlier. And this needs instilling a kind of a growth mindset in the talent universe that we are dealing with, and applying that critical thinking to generate the solutions for our unpredictable and dynamic business needs. So a new form of agility in the business world will no longer be about the survival of the fittest. It's all about survival of those who can constantly readapt at the fastest of the speed possible. And few emerging needs at workplace, which in my mind, which is fast becoming a new norm, will be that the new age workforce, like the Gen Zs who are the digital natives, they are entering the workforce and disrupting the status quo for us. And the HR technology will be more and more leveraged on effectively managing the flexible and remote work schedules. And thanks to, or courtesy the COVID pandemic that all of us have gone through, we are fast transiting into that kind of a work from anywhere kind of a work arrangement. Yeah. So that's going to change or help the remote work schedules, leading to a complete work-life integration. And more investments will happen on tech-based platforms to drive this employee well-being and inclusivity. And we need to look at flexible workforce on multiple assignments in a gig economy. And also this human capital reengineering will have to be adopted to optimize the outcome due to this enhanced collaboration between man and machine, which will change the workplace environment completely. So as big data, analytics, and AI take over the work that was previously performed by humans, the new job roles will start to emerge very fast. And this will be focused on specialized skills such as monitoring, creating, operating, or designing these automated and online processes, which will be enabled by learning analytics, which Nishya spoke about, that will keep adding value to the business outcome. So the dynamic and the fast changing business ecosystem we find is showing up constant challenges to the corporate world. So we are constantly grappling to have adequate clarity on the right futuristic skills and competencies which will make us future fit for future or as an organization. The starting assumptions for making our organizations more resilient to any future disaster that we have seen recently is to assume that none of them will be the same as those that we have experienced in the past. So there's no point in practicing some of these responses to specific catastrophes or looking at some of those competencies that we need to adopt and build in the organization. We need to invest in building those future competencies, which are to be focused on, like the learning agility as a core competency, critical thinking, empathy, the cognitive diversity, the creativity and innovation, ability to manage multiple stakeholders, the design thinking. And at the same time, we need to push up the digital savviness in the organization so that we can embrace the right technology. And it's not necessarily the best technology, it is embracing the right technology to scale up our cognitive intelligence. So fortunately, there are intense and interesting ongoing discussions about the future of learning. Thankfully, the consensus so far is that there's a need for lifelong learning and continuously acquiring those new skills to take up tasks of greater complexity, which involves creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, effective communication and collaboration. However, in my mind, one of the biggest challenge is to ensure that responsibility for learning and development has to be co-owned between the employees and the organization. And the other challenge we find in a gig economy is that there's an evolving need for millennials for a portfolio-based career with diverse career options and enhanced flexibility that they're looking at, which the organizations need to effectively support through an equally flexible and agile learning and development ecosystem. So it's imperative that we create a kind of a personalized experience around learning to make it more enriching, engaging experience by adopting highly agile and self-directed learning models. The technology will obviously play a key role in this exciting journey by not only making it accessible, but also making it engaging for the users, by utilizing their inherent learning interest and styles. The rapid
let me ask a question here, Amit, because you a little earlier, you uttered what is perhaps one of the most frightening phrases to most of the people who are in this conference, which is work-life integration. Because as we think about things like Zoom fatigue and how much time we spend online, and Amit, with the times, obviously you're engaged in media usage, media personalization that spans personal and work life. We're talking about this from the organization's perspective, but do we see technology and technology trends as somehow making work-life integration more feasible, or is it just too overwhelming when we think about another WebEx meeting or another Zoom meeting? Nishai, let me ask you first, and then Amit, will move back to you for perspectives on this. While we're doing this, I'm going to ask the audience to think of some questions, because we've got about 10 minutes left in this session, and we would like to take some questions. But Nishai, what do you think? Does technology hurt or help with this potential oversaturation?
So let me put it out there, right? And it's a bold declaration that I think the journey to transform is impossible without the use of technology. Impossible. And just recognizing just look at what we've experienced pre-pandemic, and while we're still in the pandemic, we moved from an absolute physical working environment, literally so, to a completely virtual working environment. And if somebody had kind of put it out there without the pandemic, there would have been many who would have stood up and said, it's just not possible. And it is absolutely possible. Now, while we might return to a hybrid model, the role of technology, obviously, in that regard, is equally important. How do you ensure that there is an equal playing field, a level playing field between those who return to work and those who continue to work virtually, right? How do you ensure that even though you're holding a meeting, there are few people that are within the conference room, and there are few people who are attending that meeting virtually, but there is no disparity in the experience of being part of that meeting? These are very, very important, softer aspects of being an inclusive organization. How do you ensure that you continue to provide the same learning opportunities and working opportunities now? Because clearly the only barrier that we have is the time zone difference. There are no geographical barriers. It's the ability to work with California, Australia, Europe, Eastern Standard Time, Pacific Standard Time. That's the big barrier. So you will have a slight overlap that occurs between teams. How do you utilize that very judiciously in the way we work? The way I'd sum it up is learning in the flow of work and working in the flow of life. And that is seamless integration that technology can make possible. The question is, technology isn't a panacea for all problems. But when you judiciously apply technology to your advantage and specific to learning and talent development, we have worked with a number of Fortune 500 companies pre-pandemic that were already on this journey. That material benefit in terms of financial performance, in terms of learning effectiveness, in terms of net promoter score, in terms of unique learner coverage, in terms of application of learning. These are all things that the learning community has been chasing for the longest period of time. And with the judicious use of technology, we have seen that it can accelerate this process of transformation, which is necessary in the field of learning and development if organizations are to transform as a whole.
And the key word there is judicious. So Amit, from your perspective, does technology, let's explore that judiciousness, and does technology hurt or help as we have this seamless integration of learning and work and life, which becomes a sort of a circle if you think about it?
Yeah, so see, we are seeing more and more concept that we are finding in, when I mentioned about this work-life integration and work from anywhere kind of environment, we are finding that it's becoming a kind of a Uberization of our workplace, with the flexibility of building your own work schedule and demand for a virtually digital savvy work environment, modified organizational structures, leading to more empowerment in decision making to quickly spot and grab opportunities. And most importantly, having a customer-centric design mindset and the thinking, which leads to a new organizational mindset. So I have always said that every disruption always shows up an opportunity, as long as we are agile enough to spot it and adapt to for the better. Now, workplace itself has been always been digital for a long time, especially the IT industry sector, where employees across global geographies were connected virtually across offices using technology. But the current situation that we are seeing, especially in India and also in other parts of the globe, has actually thrown up an opportunity for us to build a digital workforce. We all know that the biggest barrier for any kind of transformation that we are seeing today, an accelerated transformation, is a resistance to change. And the current pandemic that we have all witnessed, even though inadvertently, has brought that urgency for that much needed change, accelerated change in the organization. But having said that, it's important for us to understand that technology cannot replace certain softer aspects of people management. Okay, for example, the talent acquisition is all about building personal rapport, relationship with your prospective talent. The performance management is all about having those meaningful conversation. And human beings need to provide this empathy and sensitivity. They need to be creative, show that degree of innovativeness, compassion and care, while collaborating with the right technology environment and the machines. So we need to continue to leverage the right technology to enhance the people experience across our employee lifecycle touchpoints. And I firmly believe that organizations who can successfully navigate technology and maintain at the same time that human touch while being agile will eventually become the winners.
And key words there are compassion and care as part of this, because we can't take the human out of this. Now, what's interesting is you see that the questions coming up now around just these issues. And let's start, Amit, let's go right back to you with the very first question here from John. Does too much AI in the workforce remove the human factor in workplaces in coming years? And it's in that there's the anonymous question right below that. With the pandemic crisis, we're already missing personal intervention, and now AI. So, Amit, what do you think? How do we factor in the compassion and care?
See, in today's networked and symbiotic kind of a business world, I think people management is less about extracting performance from an organized few, but more about curating contribution from limitless many. I think that's what is more important for us to focus today. And since linear prediction of the future of business is too simplistic in my mind, we need to orchestrate the organization to engage in multiple scenario building exercise and make organization, all of us together, co-think the challenges and implications on each of these scenarios and co-create solution, new productivity metrics, new competencies, and to arrive at a man-machine kind of a collaborative outcomes, which make the organization future ready. I think that's where we must constantly focus on and ensure this collaborative, framework is more and more driven by us as HR professionals and business leaders as a whole. We have to constantly apply that design thinking mindset and keep asking the question, what is the expectation of my customer from me? Do I have the current capability to deliver that expectation? And if so, what are the capability gaps and how do I bridge it? I think that's the way we should question ourselves and need to create a design thinking mindset in the organization to understand the customer expectation, at the same time, manage the expectation of our stakeholders.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Nishai, there are two related questions here that I'd like you to comment on, please, especially given all that Edcast does in the world of AI. AI doing lots of work of people, is it now going to obsolete various roles in organizations? Let's look at that in the context of AI learning versus instructor-led training and trends, because that is one form of a potential obsolescence. How do you see that?
I think the answer is and, not or. So all forms of learning are going to be equally important going forward. I'm addressing the first question, the second question first, that whether it's macro learning, micro learning, human generated content or AI powered content, instructor led training or virtually instructor led training, I think everything will come together. And the question is what form and pedagogy is most appropriate, most feasible from a budget standpoint, from a scalability standpoint, from an appropriateness standpoint. Ultimately, it is about being sharply focused on what are the capability gaps, how do we bridge them, and very quickly. And I just want to touch upon agility here and the role of AI when it comes to building an agile workforce. I think the first step is how do you build an agile learning and development team, or how do you build an agile talent development team within the organization, right? Are you able to quickly assess what are the emerging needs within the organization? Are you able to leverage the skill databases, the job portals that exist outside that are indicating how skill transformation is occurring in the open market? And are you able to then tap that very quickly, create the content, produce it, impart it, and make sure that it's applied to the new environment or the changing circumstances, right? Agility is about speed. It is about compressing the time and the distance between the very first act of sensing to producing to consuming and then to applying. And that's
So
about...
Nishai, I think you've raised the right point here, because we're talking about compression of time. We have 3 seconds left here. So I feel, as in every conversation with you, Nishai, and you, Amit, that I've had a snack when I could do with a full meal. And there is so much to explore here, but I think we'll have to leave our audience wanting more. So thank you very much for joining us. This has been a fascinating discussion. And Neha, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. You anyway ended it so beautifully. But thanks once again for joining and sharing those insights with us. There was a lot of interaction in chat. I'm sure our audience is taking away a lot of insights. Thanks once again.